All right. Okay, WAP. So now we're going to go over the Unit 7 test. First of all, I'm screencasting from my beautiful apartment in Redondo Beach, California. You can see Crash asleep on the couch behind me. So here we go. So I'm starting my attempts. We are coming into the test. Okay. So first of all, workers and soldiers marching in the streets of St. Petersburg, Russian Empire, after taking control of the city 1917. Okay, so 1917, we're in World War One. We know 1914 and 1918 is World War One. Then the question asks, the makeup of the force shown in the image is best explained by the fact that by 1917, okay, so then they want us to look at the makeup of the force. Right away, you can see this woman right here. She's holding a rifle. That's a little unusual that there's a woman holding a rifle in here. It looks like there's, different types of people. There looks like soldiers. This guy's kind of in like a cowboy hat almost kind of thing. So it looks like and it says workers and soldiers. Okay, so we got all types of people in this. They're marching in the streets of St. Petersburg after taking control of the city. Okay, so Russians have seized control of their own city. Why would they do that? Let's see. Is it nationalism in Russia has intensified sharply as a result of the shared experiences in the First World War? As a result of the shared experiences? No, that's not it. Wartime propaganda fueled fanatical loyalty to the Tsarist regime. No, we hate the Tsar during the war. He becomes very unpopular. Is it Russia's army morale and home front effort were collapsing because of the strains of the war? We know that there was lack of food for the Russians. We know that the Tsar was very unpopular, and this shows total war because we have women being armed as well. Total war means you're preparing your whole civilization. So the correct answer there is C right there, C. When we go on to the next page. Okay. Same stimulus. The unrest reflected in the image is best explained by which of the following features of the Russian government at the time of the photograph. Let's see. So, following features of the Russian government. Which are the following features of the Russian government? Okay. So, the Tsarist regime that governed Russia was autocratic and unresponsive to calls for reform. That sounds right away. We know Russia was autocratic. They know that they did not reform. They didn't do all of these things leading up to the war. Was Russia composed of many different ethnic groups that had varying degrees of autonomy? Yeah, if you're talking about like the Cossacks or whatever, but is that going to explain the unrest going on here, especially with the women in the army? No, it covered a vast area of land, much economically. No, the Tsarist monarchy was tied to the monarchies of Britain and Germany. The correct answer here, guys, is A. Is A on this one. Okay, question number 3. Boom. Let's see. So, which of the following best characterizes the significance of the events in Russia in the winter of 1917 as shown in the image? What's the significance of these soldiers and workers marching on St. Petersburg, capturing their own city? This looks like the start of the overthrow of the Tsar. And so did they start a process that eventually led to a communist revolution? Yeah, I mean, that's looking really good right there. That's looking very attractive. Did it lead to the abolition of the Russian parliament, beginning of direct personal rule? No, we see the Tsar is overthrown. Did it convince Tsarist government leaders to take Russia out of the First World War by concluding a separate peace treaty? They convinced Tsarist government leaders. Oh, that's why this one's wrong, because we know that Russia did conclude a separate peace treaty, but did they convince the Tsarist government to leave? No, they convinced the Bolsheviks pulled them out of the revolution. Our correct answer here, guys, is A. They started a process that eventually led to a communist revolution. Boom. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Okay. Okay, new stimulus. It's Wilhelm II. Okay, the Kaiser of Germany. He's telegramming Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Okay, just yesterday you sent me a telegram appealing to my friendship and called upon me to act as an intermediary and help resolve the conflict between you and the Austro-Hungarian government. But I understand that even as you did this, your troops were being mobilized against Austria-Hungary. This makes my attempts at mediation almost pointless. Nonetheless, I continue my efforts today and now receive fresh news of more serious Russian preparations for war on my eastern frontier. Responsibility for the safety of my empire forces me to take defensive and preventative measures. In my endeavors to maintain the peace of the world, I have gone to the utmost limit possible. The responsibility for the disaster that is now threatened the civilized world will not be laid at my door. At this moment, you still have the power to avert war. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Which of the following events that preceded the outbreak of the First World War best explains why Russian troops were being mobilized against Austria-Hungary? In the first paragraph, okay, why are troops being mobilized against Austria-Hungary? Why are Russian troops being mobilized against Austria-Hungary? Well, we know that World War I started with Serbia assassinating the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, with Austria declaring war on Serbia, and then because Russia had an alliance with Serbia, Russia is going to declare war on Austria-Hungary and invade Austria-Hungary as being depicted in the stimulus. So we're looking for something along the lines of defending Serbia. And look, guys, what does C right here say? Russia was acting in support of Serbia, which was facing an imminent Austro-Hungarian attack following the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. That's our right answer. That one screams the right answer right there. Boom. Okay. Question 5. Same stimulus. The passage can best be used to explain the role of which of the following in bringing about the First World War. Okay, so looking at that passage, what is that going to best explain for why World War I occurred? That's what the question's asking us. Is it showing imperialism? No, it's showing Russia backing up Serbia, right? So what would that best example? C, rival great power alliances, right there. Boom. So C's our correct answer. Let's go to the next page. We are crushing this right now. Okay. Just yesterday, you sent me a telegram appealing to my friendship and called upon me to act as an intermediary and help resolve the conflict between you and the Austro-Hungarian government. Okay, so Wilhelm's assurances in this second paragraph that nobody is threatening the honor or power of Russia and that the Tsar can well afford to await the results of attempts to defuse the crisis best testify to the importance of which of the following factors. Okay, so that would be right here. Nobody is threatening the honor or power of Russia, and you can well afford to await the result of my mediation. Okay, so what he's saying is like, we're not dissing you, we're not disrespecting your army, and yet, like, you can wait until we try to solve this conflict without war. That's what it seems like is going on here. Okay, and then it's asking us, what is this best example? What is it? What is this best show right here? Well, if it looks like it's saying that, like, the honor and power of Russia need to be respected, they're important, and that Russia feels like it's being disrespected, that sounds like an intense pride in Russia. And so I'm looking around for proper answers. Does this have to do with religious and cultural traditions? No. But is it increased nationalism fueled by mass media that's often forced the hand of military and political leaders? Yes. That's B right there. So there we go. We're crushing this. Okay. Okay, 2 sources here. Which of the following does the author of source 1 cite as evidence of cultural exchange between East and West Africa during the First World War? Okay, so we need, this looks like a just like find and retrieve question. We're just going to find it in the stimulus and then, put it into the correct answer here. Wartime travel brought soldiers and carriers into contact with foreign ways of life, resulting in cultural exchange. This is it right here. It says, what do we have as evidence of cultural exchange? So there is evidence also of the Hausa experiments in architecture of grass and bamboo construction, while the troops were in East Africa as well as enthusiasm for gathering souvenirs such as cowries and other East African shells with the intention of presenting necklaces and waist belts to their womenfolk. Okay, so, very simple. There was experiments in architecture, and then they gathered, these shells to present as necklaces. Okay, so is there something there about that? It's only source 1, and that's the evidence of such. So looking around, experiments in architecture and the gathering of souvenirs, yeah, that's the correct answer. It's B right there. Boom. If you got this one wrong, you might have been thrown by the second paragraph here where it says Contact with European science and technology was another factor that contributed to change in Nigeria. But the question's asking us evidence of cultural exchange between East and West Africa. That's what this first paragraph is talking about. The second one here is talking about European exchange. So you just got to read the question on that one. I mean, that one is pretty simple. Yeah. Okay. Okay, same stimulus. Which of the following does the author of source 1 not cite as evidence of European science and technology contributing to cultural change in Nigeria? Okay, so we just, look at that source 1 second paragraph again. Before war, the men only knew the casual, nature-oriented time sense of the village. Army life taught them a new concept of punctuality. Let's see, parades, drills, and deadlines. Many Nigerians took their first ride on a train, saw their first car, airplane, motion picture. Large numbers learned to shoot and care for modern weapons, rifles, machine guns, blah, blah, blah. Basic hygiene, water sterilization, other methods of disease control. Okay, so we just got to say which one did it not? New concepts of timekeeping. Yes, it had that because it talked about a new concept of punctuality. And let's see, and deadlines. Okay, so that's timekeeping. Gift gathering for women back home. I don't think I remember that in the second part of this. Encounters with modern transportation technology. They talked about that because they talked about trains and planes and cars. And then the adoption of European hygiene they also talked about. So our correct answer there is B, gift gathering for women back home. Okay, so which of the following does the author of source 2 most directly cite as evidence of a higher casualty rate among Senegalese soldiers in combat than among French soldiers in combat? Okay, so the Senegalese soldiers they mentioned, and so okay, this one was a good question. Okay, so the first paragraph here says African deaths in combat can be contrasted to those suffered by the French using a variety of standards. So first of all, what are we talking about here? We're talking about Senegal is West Africa, and it's being controlled by France. And so France is drafting soldiers from Senegal to fight in World War I. They're using their colonies to bring soldiers to fight for them on the Western Front in World War I, right? And so what they're saying is, what's the casualty rate to the Senegalese soldiers? What's the casualty rate to the French soldiers? Let's compare. So first of all, it says, as a percentage of all the soldiers mobilized during the war, Senegalese losses were slightly less than those incurred by the French. The picture changes significantly, however, when all combatants are considered. Using this criterion, Senegalese losses were nearly 20% higher than those sustained by the French. Okay, so see 20% less than 20% more. Okay, African soldiers seldom served in the cavalry, artillery, engineering, blah, 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 where casualties were substantially lower. If only infantries are considered, French and African losses were virtually identical. Okay, so it says they're about the same. But then the question's asking, what does the author of source 2 most directly cite as evidence of higher casualty rate among Senegalese soldiers? Interesting. So maybe if we go on to the second paragraph, that would help us. This interpretation neglects, however, to consider that Senegalese were not employed in significant numbers as combatants in Europe before July 1916. I see. So what this is saying is we didn't have a lot of soldiers from Senegal in the war till 1916, and therefore if you compare all of the deaths at the end of the war and they're identical, what that actually means is that when they were being employed in mass numbers, they were dying much, much earlier. So what is the evidence that we need? It would be D, the casualty rate after July of 1916. So that's our correct answer. Go to the next page. Okay, so, communism right here. So it's a letter to Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin from a member of the Communist Party in Russia of 1920. Okay, so we're in our interwar period here, looking at that date, 1920, so we're in between the two wars. And Russia's communist, right? So Russia now is in a transition to complete communism. The letter's significance as a source of information on popular attitudes to Bolshevik revolutionary policies lies in the fact that it suggests that some Soviet citizens. All right, so this, if I remember correctly, is just a big complaining Leonard. This guy is like complaining. He's like, we're supposed to be communist, but yet in our city, there are many former factory owners And other members of the bourgeoisie, and even though their factories and businesses have been nationalized, meaning like now controlled by Russia, they don't own them themselves, you would still see them living as they did in the good old times. These gentlemen do not seem to know that a civil war is still raging and that the power is in the hands of the workers. As in the past, they continue to reside in the most luxurious, spacious, and warm apartments with luxurious furniture in their kitchens. You would see hired cooks with white caps and uniforms, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. So it sounds like this guy's complaining because the rich still have a better life than the workers, right? So let's see if there's something that says that. Supported the Bolsheviks in their nationalization of industrial property, but it urged them to seize the upper class's private property as well. That's exactly what's going on, and that's the right answer right there. Boom. Let's go to the next page. All right, same stimulus. Considering the purpose of the letter, it most likely overstates which of the following. Okay, so the purpose of the letter, let's start with that. You have to think about that. What's the purpose of the letter? Purpose of the letter is to convince Lenin to seize the upper class's property, right? You can look at that. That's the whole point. So what would it overstate? Well, right off the bat, it's going to overstate that the bourgeoisie is living lives of luxury, that they have too much, you know, wealth. They're living like the old times, like it says, and that they've got hired cooks and they've got all these luxurious furniture and all these things, and they should be confiscated, right? So, what's it going to overstate? It's going to be overstate the extent to which wealthy Russians continue to live exactly like they did before. They're going to try to play that up to try to get Lenin to confiscate that stuff. So, boom, that's that. What else? Okay. Which of the following best explains a likely significant purpose behind the author publishing his article in a Canadian journal? Oh, okay. Oh, different stimulus. My bad. Okay, we got a different stimulus here. I was gonna say what? Okay. Um, Japan's colonial policy aims at extending its colonies into the principle of paternalistic projection followed in the homeland. The protection of industry and education, which is a characteristic feature of Japanese administration at home, has largely been transplanted into the Korean peninsula. The result have followed the industrialization of Korea for both the native population and the Japanese administration. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is Japan is now claiming that because Japan has conquered Korea, that Korea is now better off. That's what they're saying. And that would make sense because the guy speaking over here is a Japanese economist. And so he's going to try to say that actually Japanese administration in Korea is actually helping things. Like, for instance, he says the development of industries has increased capital in the country and helped Korean society in a general advance toward a capitalistic stage of development. Okay, so which of the following best explains a likely significant purpose but behind the author publishing his article in a Canadian journal? Did he wish to intimidate potential Western rivals? I don't think so. I mean, even before we look at the answers here, is probably going to be to try to rationalize to the rest of the world Japanese imperialism. It's going to try to rationalize why why Japan took over the Korean Peninsula. And look, there we go, right there. See, Yanahara wished to justify continued Japanese colonial rule of Korea to potentially hostile Western states. And that's the right answer right there. Boom. And we move on. These are all advanced questions, by the way, guys. I believe the first 19 were advanced STEM questions. And just looking by your scores already, they've been really good. And so I'm feeling very, very optimistic about this, guys. So well done. Okay, Japan's colonial policy aims at extending. Okay, so same stimulus here. Which of the following best explains the long-term historical significance of the views expressed by Yanahara in the passage? Okay, the long-term significance of these views. So the way that I do this question is I say, okay, what are these views? These views are that Japanese imperialism benefits the people they conquer. That's basically what they're saying here. So what's the long-term significance of that? The long-term significance of that is Japan's going to start trying to conquer all of these different lands to build that greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere in the Pacific. Looking at that date, 1938, that's before World War II. That's showing like, okay, we're going to use this concept of like essentially social Darwinism that the Japanese are employing to conquer these different places. And they're going to try to justify it for conquering lands in the Pacific later on. I mean, that's what I'm guessing, not even looking at the answers here. And then it says, A, they show some members of the Japanese elite feared the growth of communist influence. Japan did fear the growth of communist influence, but that's not depicted in the stimulus. They show that some members of the Japanese elite sought to justify aggressive Japanese colonial efforts in China and the Pacific region. And that's exactly it right there. So that is B on that one. Next page. Excuse me. Okay. Oh boy. All right, we got a stimulus from Hitler here. Adolf Hitler in 1937. Right off the bat, I'm thinking to myself, Hitler came to power in 33, 34. And so this is during the Holocaust. This is actually right in the middle of, Hitler making his first moves in Europe, starting to conquer lands like, the Rhineland and Austria and the Sudetenland and all these things. So in the context of the late 1930s, the argument that Hitler makes in the last paragraph are most significant in explaining how. Okay, so let's look at this last paragraph here. Germany has never demanded colonies for military purposes, but exclusively for economic purposes. It is obvious that in times of general prosperity that the value of certain territories may decrease, but it is just as evident that in times of distress, such values increases. Today, Germany lives in a time of difficult struggle for foodstuffs and raw materials. Sufficient imports are conceivable only if there is continued and lasting increase in our exports. Therefore, as a matter of course, our demand for colonies for our densely populated country will be put forward again and again. So Hitler's saying that economically colonies help everybody, including Germany, and that in a time of dire need like the Great Depression, as we are in 1937, that Germany needs to conquer some territories. And so in the context, Hitler makes these points to help explain what? Is it the protectionist policies of Western European states contributed to the economic collapse? Protectionist policies, that would be like tariffs, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's true, but it's not being depicted in the source. The Great Depression gave fascist states an excuse to take over all aspects of economic production. Also true, like for instance, fascist Italy took over all aspects of economic production with corporatism, but still not applicable here. Imperialist aspirations contributed to the motivating policies of fascist states. That is our correct answer right there because, first of all, it's totally applicable to Hitler. That's exactly what Hitler does. He comes in and he takes over all these lands, and you can see it also in that third paragraph. So it is C. We go on to the next question. Okay, same stimulus. The point of view that he expresses in the first three paragraphs is most directly significant in helping explain how which of the following contributed to the Second World War. Okay, so we read the last paragraph. Let's read the first three. The German people once built a colonial empire without robbing anyone, without violating any treaty. The colonial empire was taken away from us unreasonably. Okay, so we've already got some resentment for the Treaty of Versailles. First, it was said that natives of these colonies did not belong to Germany, but who asked them if they wished to belong to some other power when these natives were asked if they could be content with the power that formerly ruled them. Okay, so Hitler's mad that the Treaty of Versailles granted self-determination to nations like Poland, who were then stripped away from Germany after World War I. And then it says, second, if it stated that the colonies were not administered properly by the Germans, but Germany had these colonies only for a few decades, that they were in the process of development. Third, it is said that colonies are of no real value, but if that is the case, then there would be no value to every other state. So basically, Hitler's bitter about the Treaty of Versailles, right? Because it sounds like he's mad that Poland was stripped away from self-determination and that the other colonies were stripped away from Germany. So which helps explain, how do these three passages help explain what caused World War II? The provisions of the Treaty of Versailles that ended First World War. That's our correct answer right there, because that's what stripped away Germany's colonies. So there we go. All right. Based on the historical situation in which the speech was given, Hitler's most significant motivation for giving the speech was likely to continue to A, make his case that German people, that Jews and other minority populations were a threat to Germany. This doesn't mention Jews or other minority populations. So we're going to stimulate that one. We're going to say, no, that's not right, not mentioned in the stimulus. Overstate the extent to which Nazi economic policies helped Germany overcome the unjust actions of its Western European rivals and prosper again. Okay. Um, that could be it. I mean, it's has a tie to economic policies here. Let's keep going. Reinforce the idea to the German people that the past injustices require Germany to continue its military buildup and engage in further territorial expansion. Okay, that most directly responds to the stimulus there. The B, it had that economic ties. You can see that, okay, we can take two steps to get to economic, but this one's talking about territorial expansion. And given here we are in 1937, we've already been building up the military, all these things. So C is our correct answer on this one. All right, here we go. Many years later, Prime Minister Clement Attlee wrote that if someone asked him what exactly did Winston Churchill do to win the war, he would say, "Talk about it." Let's see. The effect of his speeches to the nation on British morale is incalculable and can be described without hyperbole as transforming. Churchill's words gripped the nation as they were meant to, have both politicians and people of the United States anywhere else that an English-speaking population had access to them. They seriously irritated the Nazis and arguably contributed to Hitler making ill-advised strategic decisions, such as switching German bombing raids in Britain from airfields to civilian centers. The speeches themselves were the first great battle of the Second World War, fought and won not with hurricanes and spitfires, but with words, passion, and history. Awesome. Okay, so which of the following would best support the argument in the first paragraph about the role of Churchill's speeches in Great Britain's war effort? Well, I mean, very simply, before I even look at the answers, this is all about talking about Churchill boosting up the morale of the British people. I mean, he did this by the radio, right? Speaking to the British people every night, just like FDR did, encouraging them to fight on, to continue the fight. We'll never surrender. We'll fight on the beaches. We'll fight on the streets. We'll never surrender. That was Churchill, right? So other nations' leaders during the war also made speeches to their people. That's not going to support the point at all. They're just talking about the greatness of Churchill's speeches. New mass media such as the radio greatly expanded the reach of government's mobilization efforts. Aha, that sounds good because it's helping the British people mobilize, and we know that he used the radio. Um, okay, despite its economic and logistical support for Britain, the United States did not formally join the war against Germany until after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Very true, but is it what he's talking about in the first paragraph of the stimulus? No, so it's not C. And then it says, for almost a full year after the British declaration of war on Germany, there was no military action on British soil. Not what they're talking about at all. Our correct answer is B on this one. News media, such as the radio, expanded the reach of the government's mobilization efforts. So, boom. That's good. We're crushing this. Okay, which of the following best explains why the author uses the claim that the British government did not have to apply any undue pressure on either factory owners or factory workers during the war, which explains why the British government did not have to apply any undue pressure on either factory owners or factory workers. Okay. So we got to find that part of the stimulus, right? So let's see. Okay. So it says Churchill turned on the island rhetoric, and the British people across all classes, with very few exceptions, echoed him. It is impossible not to be struck by the degree to which Britain had been such a divided society between the Boers, managed to pull together when it mattered most. The unions and employers, so bitterly at odds for so long now, work together so that no undue government pressure need to be applied to factories, many of them, of course, staffed by women working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, so it says, which of the following best explains that he uses that claim that they didn't have to use undue pressure? Okay, he wanted to support his argument that Britons were completely mobilized for the war effort. Okay, that sounds right, because if the factory owners and the factory workers are all working, they're all mobilized in total war for the war effort. That sounds reasonable. He wanted to show that military aircraft such as Hurricanes and Spitfires were not the only deciding factor in British victory. Okay, yeah, that's true. Although he already said that, and I think what he's saying is that Winston Churchill encouraged the people, and therefore they were all mobilized. So I think A is a better answer than B. He wanted to prove his point that Britain was very divided, was a very divided society between the two world wars. Well, he said that, but he didn't elaborate. A is going to be the right answer on this one. He wanted to support his argument that Britons were completely mobilized during the war effort. A is our right answer on this one. Okay. By the way, props to my wife over there who's just sitting through and listening to me talk through a test. It's pretty brutal stuff. Okay. Same stimulus. As all of the following statements are factually accurate, which could most directly be used to modify the argument that the war provided overwhelming evidence of newfound British social cohesiveness and mutual loyalty? Okay. So all of these statements are true. That's what it's saying. Which could best be used to modify the argument? So when the College Board uses this term, modify the argument, what that means is like challenge it, to say like, this argument needs to be changed because there's an exception. That's usually what this is saying. So which could most directly be used to modify the argument that the war provided overwhelming evidence of a newfound British social cohesiveness and mutual loyalty? Okay. So with that, what's gonna be able to contradict the fact that there wasn't after the war all this new loyalty to Britain? British military production in key sectors such as aircraft and munitions generally outpaced German production. That's not going to modify the argument. That's not going to be a counterpoint to the argument. Churchill replaced Neville Chamberlain as prime minister after Chamberlain lost the support of the country. Again, not going to modify the argument. After a brief period of supporting the war effort, the Indian National Congress continued its anti-imperialist agitation, with Gandhi launching the Quit India campaign. That's going to modify the argument because India is controlled by Britain. And right after the war, India is going to say, we want to be independent, right? They're going to continue their anti-imperialist sentiments. So C on that one. Whew, here we go. All right. Oh, okay. So we got a political cartoon here. Dr. Seuss, PM Magazine, August 13th, 1941. Right off the bat, for me personally, I'm thinking 1941. That's the year that the United States entered the war. But here we are in August of 1941. So we haven't entered yet because the attack of Pearl Harbor is December 7th, 1941. In the political cartoon, what does the appeaser's role symbolize? Okay, we got to look at this here. All right, so there's like this little like Dr. Seuss character in the middle, and he's holding what it looks like a bunch of lollipops. And then we've got like all of these swastika covered like creatures that are eating the lollipops. Okay, and then it says up at the top, remember, one more lollipop, then you'll all go home. Okay, but he's called the appeaser. Okay, so I see what's going on. So this he's like giving all these creatures lollipops, but like more and more are coming, and you're just feeding the monster. That's what appeasement is, right? That's the criticism with like Neville Chamberlain, where he, kept allowing Hitler to do more and more, to mobilize his army, to take the Rhineland, to build the Luftwaffe, and then take the Sudetenland, all these things. So what does the appeaser's rule symbolize? That's got to be Britain and France granting Hitler territory right there. That one's pretty straightforward. All right. So same stimulus here. What historical event provided the best example of appeasement to avoid war? Okay. So that one's going to be the Munich Conference. That one's going to be when Neville Chamberlain promises the Sudetenland to Hitler. And that's at the Munich Conference. That one's pretty simple. Okay. Next one. The author of this cartoon would likely support. Okay. So these are the ones we always kind of have problems with. So when you think about political cartoons, guys, you got to remember that political cartoons are there to depict something that is, they're going to point out something that's stupid in society. They're going to point out a problem or a fault in society. They're going to criticize using irony. And that's exactly what's going on here, right? So we've got this appeaser in the middle. one more lollipop and then you'll all go home. But you see all these hungry monsters appearing. In fact, it's using irony because they're not going home. They're mobilizing. They're surrounding this appeaser guy. So he's making fun of appeasement. He's criticizing appeasement, right? And so here we are in August of 1941. The U.S. has not entered the war yet, and so this looks like it's criticizing appeasement and wants the U.S. to get more involved in the war. So the author of this cartoon would most likely support the United States deciding to stay neutral. No, right? We can eliminate that. The United States staying away from an alliance with the Soviet Union. Nothing to do with the Soviet Union here, right? We just not mentioned in the stimulus. The United States entering the war on the side of the Allies. Yeah, that sounds like it would be good. Or the United States supporting the Axis powers as Germany is seemingly unbeatable. No, the correct answer is C right there. Let's go. Okay. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, 1918. Okay, right off the bat, guys, when you do these kind of stimulus questions, your first thought is, what is that? Even before you read it, what's the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk? That was the treaty that took Italy, that took Russia out of World War I. Russia is going to drop out of the war. That's going to be Lenin and the Bolsheviks. They're promising peace, land, and bread. They don't want to fight in the war anymore because they want to establish a communist state. That's what they're trying to do. So with that in mind, one benefit of the Bolshevik-led Russians from signing the treaty was that it allowed, okay, what benefit did the Bolshevik-led Russians get from signing this treaty? Well, there wasn't a lot of benefits. I mean, not even looking at the answers yet. They had to give up a bunch of lands to Germany and Austria-Hungary. They, had to drop out of the war. So I don't know why there would be a benefit here. Let's think about this. One benefit was that it allowed Tsar Nicholas II to hold off the communist revolution. Well, first of all, we're already post Tsar Nicholas II here. We're signing the treaty. That means the Bolsheviks are already in charge. So that doesn't make sense. And we know Tsar Nicholas II didn't hold off the communist revolution, so that's doubly wrong. B, the government should prepare for an attack by the Allies. Well, Russia was on the Allies, so that doesn't make sense. The country to set up a provisional government. Now, you might have thought to say that, Wappers, but remember, the provisional government comes before the Bolsheviks, and the provisional government makes one mistake, and that mistake is they stay in the war. And that allows the popularity of the Bolsheviks and Lenin to become so strong that then they're going to seize power and get out of the war. So it's not C, it's D, the country to defeat internal counter-revolutionaries. And that's right because of this. The Bolsheviks are communists, and they're now fighting a Russian civil war. The Bolsheviks are the revolutionaries. The people that are fighting the revolutionaries are people resisting communism. Therefore, they are counter-revolutionaries. Our correct answer is D, although you could have solved that just, with process of elimination. Okay. Whew, almost there. One disadvantage for Russia from signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was that it gave up a ton of lands, right? Like, that's right off the bat. I'm looking to see if that's even an option. D, took away enormous amounts of Russian lands. I mean, we can look at the other ones. Require the Russians to release prisoners of war without guarantee of safety of its own prisoners. Is that mentioned in the stimulus at all? Article 8, the prisoners of war of both parties will be released to return to their homeland. So, no, that's not right. Force the Russians to pay war reparations. Let's see on that one. Article 9, the contracting parties mutually renounce compensation for their war expenses, meaning like neither one of us is paying anything. They took away Russian colonies in Africa. No, Russia didn't even have any colonies in Africa, and it's not mentioned in the stimulus. Yeah, correct answer is D, no doubt about it. Okay. Last 6 questions, everybody. Okay, which article of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk seems to support the principle of self-determination as expressed by Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I? Okay, so self-determination, without looking at the stimulus yet, we know what that is. Self-determination means allowing people of the same ethnicity or nationality to rule themselves. If they were previously being ruled by a majority group and that were within an empire, self-determination was like, nope, you should renounce claims to that land and you should allow these people to rule themselves. Okay, so which one of these articles is talking about allowing people to rule themselves? Well, that's going to be Article 3 because it says the territories lying to the west of the line agreed by the contracting parties, which formerly belonged to Russia, including Finland, the Baltic states, and Ukraine, will no longer be subject to Russian sovereignty. Germany and Austria-Hungary propose to determine the future status of these territories in agreement with their population, meaning we're going to let them decide, whose land they belong to, where they're supposed to be, who rules who. So that one is going to be Article 3. Okay. Question number 26. All right, so we got Hitler again, this time in Mein Kampf. Okay, so Hitler's not in power now. This is 1925. So this is when Hitler's in jail. He's writing a book, Mein Kampf. And what's he talking about? All great cultures of the past perish only because the original creative race died out from blood poisoning. Okay, God, so this is going to be some anti-Semitic crap. The ultimate cause of such a decline was their forgetting that all culture depends on men and not conversely, hence that to preserve a certain culture, the man that creates it must be preserved. If we were to divide mankind into 3 groups, the founders of culture, the bearers of culture, and the destroyers of culture, only Aryan would be considered as a representative of the first group. Okay, so this is a bunch of Hitler nonsense talking about Aryans being supreme or whatever. So which policy did Nazi leaders try to justify most directly with the ideas expressed in the excerpt? Okay, so is this about communism? No, because this is about ethnicity and nationality. This is going to have to do with Aryans being supreme, right? So discrimination against non-desirables and lands controlled by Germany? Yeah, that's our right answer right there, no question. So B. All right. Last 4 questions. Which group of people would most strongly disagree with the ideas in the excerpt? Okay, the Turkish government of World War I. No, because the Turkish government of World War I was incredibly nationalistic and committed genocide in its own right against the Christian Armenians. So definitely not it. Supporters of socialist realism. Socialist is economic, right? Let's drop my pen. Sorry about that. So no, this is cultural. This is like racist. This is discriminatory. That doesn't make sense. Opponents of anti-Semitism, which who would disagree with this? Opponents of anti-Semitism. Yeah, so C on that one for sure. Okay, coming down to the last 3 questions. Which of the following is another definition of another of Hitler's stated goals in Mein Kampf? Lebensraum. Lebensraum means living space. So B, gaining more living space. Okay. Which is not true about Hitler's rise to power in Germany. That is, Hitler was aided by the burning of the Reichstag. He was. Was he given unlimited powers by the Enabling Act? Yes. Did he attain the chancellor position by force? No. President von Hindenburg appointed him legally, which kind of shows the craziness of the Great Depression, that Hitler actually was legally appointed chancellor. That's insane. Okay, we're on question 30. I'm so sorry for both you guys and me. I thought that we were going to be done at question 30, but no, we have 40 STEM questions. My goodness, I'm so sorry to my wife. I'm so sorry to my wife. Okay, I'm going to pick things up here. The first laws passed by Hitler to accomplish the goal discussed in the passage above were the Nuremberg laws, because that stripped the rights of Jews in Germany. Okay, so we have a map, and this map shows World War II Allied battle movements. Starting in Pearl Harbor, and we're moving towards the mainland of Asia and moving towards Japan. What's that strategy being used? That's, of course, island hopping. None of these other ones really make sense here. So we move on to the next question. Which general led the strategy above? Who led the island hopping campaign? That's going to be your boy, General Douglas MacArthur. Eisenhower led things in Europe. MacArthur led things in the Pacific against Japan. After which turning point battle did this strategy start to be utilized? Oh, the turning point battle in the Pacific, guys, 1942, the Battle of Midway, sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, turning the tide in the Pacific. Okay, ooh, we got Gandhi. He's spinning his own clothes. And what was the action above? Why was it important for his Satyagraha movement or the devotion to truth movement? Why is he spinning his own clothes? Because it shows his commitment to boycott on buying British goods. I mean, right there, because the British control the textile industry. We don't want to buy British textiles, so we're going to make our own clothes. Which nationalist organization did Gandhi belong to and become the leader of? That's our Indian National Congress. Boom. What event increased Indian nationalism? Okay, May 4th movement, that's in China. March 1st movement, that's in Korea. The Amritsar massacre for sure is going to be our event that caused Indian nationalism. Gandhi again. What demonstration of civil disobedience against the British did Gandhi also conduct? The Salt March, of course. The Salt March. All right, we've got Gandhi one more time. Which movement, similar to one like Gandhi led above, emerged in West Africa? Okay, so in West Africa, what nationalist movement occurred? Was it the mandate system? No, that wouldn't make sense. The mandate system was opposed upon groups like Africa by the Treaty of Versailles in Western Europe. Pan-Arabism? No, that's going to be within Arab people, especially in Northern Africa and the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula. So no, the Negritude movement is our correct answer right there. The Negritude movement emerged in West Africa. Last 2 questions. Oh, the Long March. Which of the following correctly explains the actions above? Okay. So let me see here. Which following correctly explains the actions above. Okay, so we're marching. Why are we marching? Is it the Kuomintang escaping from the communists? Nah, it's the other way around. It's the communists escaping from the Kuomintang. So that's C, the Communist Army escaping from the Kuomintang Army. Boom. Next page. Last STEM question. Allie, you excited? She said, mm-hmm. What was the direct effect of the march above? Did the communists win the Chinese Civil War less than a year later? No. Did the Chinese earn respect from the Japanese and form an alliance? No. Did the communists show their resolve and gain admiration for many peasants in China? Yes. That is our correct answer. Boom. And that will go on to the next page. That's the last stimulus question. And so now we can kind of chill here for a second and let me just talk to you guys. Okay. So thank you for listening to this screencast on the test. I know they're often long to go over the STEM questions. Let me give you some important instructions. So to do the test corrections for this test, use your book, and then you can also use what I just explained, what I just went through with you. I am going to post the test correction sheet on Schoology so that you can access it and you can print it out. On the test correction sheet, I will let you type it. You can type it on that one and do that rather than having to do it by hands. And so that's a good thing. And then for the people that have made it all the way to this point in the video, I'm now going to announce how you do your team points. So listen carefully on this one. So I am going to now pull up the team points so that I know exactly where we were. Okay. So can you guys see this? So that's the team points right there for where we were before we got shot down. Just got to remind. So for second period, the first place team was Japan. And the the USA by 1 point finishes in second. So in second period, Japan got first place, the USA got second place. So if you're in second period, you're going to text me. If you were in Japan, you're going to text me Japan +2. If you're in second period and you're the US, you're gonna send a reminder. You're gonna send me a message, and you're gonna say US +1. You have to know these instructions and do that to be able to get the bonus. And of course, guys, you have to be in that team to get the bonus. Don't try any tricky stuff on me. You have to be part of the team to be messaging me that. Okay, if you're in fourth period, first place by a considerable margin was the USSR. So fourth period, first place is the USSR. Second place by 1 point is the USA. So, in your fourth period, you're going to message me USSR +1, USSR +2. If you're in Team USA, you'd write USA +1. And then finally, last but not least, we have fifth period. Fifth period, first place was China, and second place was the USSR. So if you're in fifth period, you're going to message me China +2 and USSR +1. Okay, guys. Other than that, we're going to have some big changes this week regarding just kind of structure and everything. But I'll talk to you guys more about that later. Be healthy, stay safe. Enough talking for me. You guys have a good day.